Today is Sunday, July 26th, 2026, and I am here with Benjamin, and we are going to talk about the persona named Benji.
Chapter 6 The Roadmap. The elevator descended from the fourth floor. Dr. Jim's office on the way up, just me on the way down. 4 floors of standing alone in a metal box watching the numbers change. 4, 3, 2, ground. And as I watched the numbers descend, the question came back. The question I'd first heard in June 2018 in the living room. When my dad told me football was over, the question I had locked eyes with in the mirror that October in the weight room before a game. Who am I now? 5 minutes ago I had been a student coach at Northwestern. Now I was just a kid in an elevator. The emptiness from June 20th, 18 came back with the question, the same pit that had opened in the living room the night my dad told me. The same pit that hadn't closed in 15 months and never would close again from inside it. Who am I now that I've just lost my external role for the second time? The numbers kept falling and the doors opened. I walked through the hallways for the last time, scanned my thumb at the locker room door for the last time, watched the green light come on and the latch click open for the last time. Walked past the players' locker room, close enough to hear them like always, close enough to see them like always, and into the coach's locker room for the last time. I packed my duffel bag and my backpack at the locker that had been mine for 6 weeks. Shoe, shorts, shirts. Each shirt and pair of shorts had my name on the inside. Ben Miller, stitched in by the equipment staff before I'd ever worn them. As I picked each one up and folded it into the bag, I read my name, then read it again. Ben Miller, Ben Miller, Ben Miller. Who is he? Who are we now? Dazed and empty, that was the only thing I felt. The body moving through the motions of leaving while the inside of me just sat there asking the question over and over to a name on the inside of a shirt that didn't have an answer. Then I walked out for the last time. The walk back to my dorm was the loudest the question had ever been. Who am I now? It had been there since the elevator, but in the hallways and the locker room I'd had things to do. Doors to scan, a bag to pack, a name on a shirt to fold. Now there was just sidewalk under my feet and the question with nowhere else to land. By the time I got back to the dorm, the timeline was clear. It was Thursday. The freshmen, the kids I'd be spending the next 4 years with, were beginning to arrive that following week. 10 days, that was the window. 10 days to decide who I was going to be before the people who would know me for the next 4 years met me for the first time. I never considered telling them the truth. The truth was that I was Benjamin Miller, post-stroke, who had been a student coach for 6 weeks and just quit. That half my body didn't work the way the other half did. That underneath the performances, I didn't know who I was. I didn't want to know that version of myself, and I didn't want anyone else to know him either. I wanted to be the pre-stroke version of me. Show no weakness, show nothing. That's what I was taught strength was, showing nothing. So I had 10 days to build something that would let me walk into a freshman dorm next week and not be him. Those 10 days were defined by one thing. I drank every night until I blacked out. From the outside, it looked like a normal freshman in the days before school, hanging out, going to parties, drinking too much. The kind of week any first year is having before classes start. But internally I knew. The second the alcohol hit my tongue each night, I knew I was going to drink until I didn't feel anything. Until I didn't remember anything, until the question that had followed me from Houston to Evanston, out of the athletic facility and into my dorm, got drowned out completely for a few hours. Because for those few hours each night, the pit was full. In reality, that pit never closed. The alcohol just drowned the part of me that could feel it. That wasn't a freshman drinking too much. That was a mask being built one drink at a time. the hole inside getting filled the only way I knew how to fill it. The shame and the guilt gone for a few hours every night because the part of me that held them couldn't access itself. That next week was Wildcat Welcome, the week before classes start at Northwestern, a week-long event every day, every night, meeting freshmen across campus, going around the dorms at night, inviting people to my room to drink, playing music, inviting everyone. I didn't have a group of friends yet, just acquaintances, but a lot of them. The new version of Benjamin, let me introduce him, as Benji had been built in private for 10 nights, walked into the open and got tested in the daylight, and it worked. People liked him, the outgoing one, the social one, the guy who showed up to everything, knew everyone, didn't seem to have anything weighing on him. By the end of the week, I had a wide circle of people who thought they were meeting me for the first time. They were meeting the version I'd built for them, and it felt right. That's the part I didn't expect, not just that the mask worked, that wearing it felt like the answer. Freshman year is supposed to be exactly this: social, outgoing, making everyone feel included, going out, having fun. The identity I'd constructed wasn't out of place, it was the assignment. The mask held clean across the whole week. The kid in the elevator never showed through. The pain was hidden from everyone, and every night I knew I could drink the suffocating feeling away. So that's what I did. School started the week after. Most of fall quarter blurs together when I try to look back at it. Classes, parties, the routine I'd built across the summer still running underneath everything new. But one class held its shape clearly: freshman seminar in the Weinberg School of Arts. The seminar required a 10-page research paper on a topic of our choosing, something we'd live inside for the full quarter, researching, writing about, defending. By the second or third week, I knew what I was going to write about: intermittent fasting, the thing that had defined me since January, the thing I was 9 months into, the thing that had escalated from 16 hours to 18 to 20 across those 9 months. And not only was I going to read about it, write about it, defend it, I was already living it. At the time, it felt like the perfect academic topic. Fall of 2019. Intermittent fasting still wasn't widely known in the health and wellness community. Most people hadn't heard of it. The research was thin, the public information was thinner, and I felt as a freshman I could actually contribute something. I could pull together the pros and cons, the different approaches, the different windows into one paper. I didn't see what I was actually doing. I wasn't researching a topic, I was building a justification. 10 weeks to read every study on every fasting protocol. 10 weeks to try the ones I hadn't tried yet. 10 weeks to live deeper into the practice that had become me. And to call it a school assignment. The lab rat I made myself had a lab coat now. The paper had a shape. I started with the introduction: what intermittent fasting was, how to define it for someone who'd never heard of it. Then the pros: autophagy, the body's recycling of cells, mental clarity during the fasted window, the metabolic and cognitive benefits I'd been reading about across every study I could find. Then the closing section: the different types of fasts laid out as research, the mild ones most people had heard of, and the extended fasts measured in days that most people hadn't. A full spectrum on the page. I wrote that as research, just a survey of the field. But underneath the academic writing, each fast was a version of myself I hadn't tried, and one pulled: alternate day fasting. It was the one that fit: 24 to 36 hours of fasting, then a feeding day followed by a fasted day. The structure mapped perfectly onto everything else I'd built. The morning workouts could continue, the social life could continue, the drinking could continue, the studying could continue. Alternate day fasting was the only protocol that wouldn't make me sacrifice any of the other identities I was holding together. By writing this research paper, I wasn't just describing the field, I was reading my own roadmap. and the road I chose was alternate day fasting. What the paper didn't account for was the body. On paper, alternate day fasting fit perfectly. In practice, the body kept score. On fasted days, I'd still go out at night, still drink, still be the first year everyone had met at Wildcat Welcome. But there was nothing in me, no food, no energy except caffeine and alcohol, going into a body that had been empty since the night before. And by the end of the night, I could feel the pull. The starved body, and underneath it, the pit. The pit had never closed. Fasting didn't close it. Discipline didn't close it. Alcohol numbed it for a few hours, but the second the alcohol wore off, it was right there again, deeper than it had been the night before. The pit was the thing that made binging appealing. The pit was the thing the food was reaching for, not the food itself. The food was just the tool the body had found to try to fill what had been hollow for 15 months. So, on those nights, 24 hours of fasting, drunk, the pit screaming louder than the mind's rules, the body went looking. 2 or 3 nights a week through that fall quarter, I binged. Not purging at this point, just binging. The body taking what it had been refused, the cookies, potato chips, pizza, whatever was available to a drunk kid with over 24 hours in a fasted state. And every time I came out of a binge, the guilt that arrived the next morning pushed me into stricter fasting, longer fasted days, cleaner feeding days, tighter rules. The guilt was the engine, the same engine that had been running since the morning after the first binge, and every screw I tightened in response made the next binge more inevitable. Then a fasting day, then a feeding day, then a fasting day, then a binge. The paper I was writing said, this was discipline. The body I was living in knew it wasn't. The cycle kept running through the rest of fall quarter. The drinking continued, the binges continued, 2 or 3 a week, sometimes more, sometimes less, but the loop never stopped turning. 10 weeks of the same rhythm, 10 weeks of the paper getting written between the days the body was empty and the days it was full. 10 weeks of being the first year everyone had met during Wildcat Welcome by day, and the first year alone with a backpack of food at 1 in the morning some nights. And somewhere across those 10 weeks, the body started telling me something. After a binge would push me into a stricter fasting day. The fasting day would push me into a deeper starved state, and by the time the next feeding day came, I couldn't eat what I'd planned to eat, couldn't sit down with a normal meal, whatever normal was, without the binge taking over again. The starvation had gone too deep. The body wasn't asking for food anymore, it was demanding everything I had refused. That was the moment I felt it without thinking it. Not in my head, in my starved stomach, in the starved state I was living inside. This isn't sustainable. I knew it the way a body knows a fever before a thermometer reads one. But the only way I knew was forward. I had committed to writing this paper. I had to live the research I was writing about, so I kept doing it anyway. I turned the paper in, went home for winter break, came back to Evanston in January. The cycle was waiting in my dorm room when I got there. Same protocol, same feeding days, same drinking, same binges. It had been waiting for me. Winter quarter was a darker version of the fall. Same alternate day fasting, same drinking, same binges, but everything escalated. More alcohol, and earlier in the day. What had been a nighttime release in the fall now started in the afternoon, kept going into the evening, and ran all the way through the night. The pit hadn't gotten smaller across the break. If anything, the 3 weeks at home had made the need to escape bigger by the time I got back to Evanston in January. 3 weeks of trying to look like a regular college freshman in front of my parents during the holidays, trying to pretend. So I poured more into the only equation I knew. Tighter rules on fasting days, more alcohol earlier on all days. And when the alcohol and the empty stomach met at night, the binge that followed was bigger than the ones in the fall. The cycle didn't change shape, it just got louder. 2 or 3 binges a week became 3 or 4, some weeks 5. The whole quarter blurred into the same loop. The stricter the rules got, the more everything else fell apart. The more it fell apart, the stricter the rules got. The rigidity was supposed to be the answer. Instead, every screw I tightened cracked something else. I was 6 months past Stanford, almost a year into being a college student, and Benji, the version of Benjamin everyone had met at Wildcat Welcome, was still holding clean on the outside, even as the body underneath him was breaking down on a rhythm no one could see. The night before I was supposed to fly home, I went out for sushi with one of my best friends and I drank a bottle of vodka at dinner. Nothing unusual, not a different night. Something I'd done many times across the fall and winter. Vodka at dinner, more after, blackout by the end of it. The pattern had become my normal. I blacked out so badly that night that I woke up the next morning on the couch in my fraternity house. My phone screen cracked beyond use. The time on the clock was already past when my flight to Houston was supposed to have landed, and the first thing I felt before I understood any of it was the guilt. Before I knew where I was, before I remembered the night before I'd processed what missing the flight meant. The same guilt, doing what it always did, driving the rules tighter, rising from my stomach through the rest of my body, a wave of it. But it was different now, and not because the guilt was bigger, because I'd gotten used to it. I knew this guilt. It had been my morning companion for months. I recognized the shape of it, the way you recognize a roommate. It wasn't shocking anymore. It was furniture. That was the morning the world stopped. Northwestern shut down because of COVID. A few days later, everyone went home. The fraternity emptied, the bars closed, the party boy identity didn't have an audience to show up for anymore. The relief valve I'd built across my first 6 months of college lost its function overnight. I got on a flight to Houston the next day with the guilt still in my body and no plan for what came next. The cycle that had been running since the elevator descended from Dr. Jim's office was interrupted by COVID, but the body it had been running through and the emotions it had been running away from, those were coming home with me.